We've been together for 7 years, 4 of them married. We have 2 children. I never had any reason to suspect him of cheating or being unhappy in our marriage. He even likes to joke that we're still living in our honeymoon almost 5 years later. I wouldn't have doubted it if it hadn't been for one unexpected discovery in his car last month. When I was buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something stuck between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw it was a tampon. That wouldn't have seemed so strange if I didn't have an IUD, which means I haven't had a period in over a year. I showed it to my husband, and at first, he didn't even recognize what it was until I explained where I found it and why I was sure it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his colleague Fiona. He sometimes has lunch with coworkers, and we're both pretty close with Fiona and her husband, so I thought maybe it fell out of her bag when he gave her a ride. I let it go until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I wanted to believe my husband, but what bothered me was how carefully the tampon was wedged into the seat and how he acted like it was nothing, as if playing dumb. I did something that now feels a little crazy. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had a tampon on her. She handed me one, almost identical to the one I had found in the car. I felt relieved. Most likely, it really was hers. Just a coincidence. I thought that would be the end of it, until this morning I found another tampon, this time in my husband's sock drawer. The thought that my husband might be cheating made me physically sick. What disturbed me even more was the idea that maybe this woman was deliberately leaving these tampons for me to find. If it really was his colleague, why did she casually hand me one at dinner? Normally, I'd confront my husband right away, but I feel too ashamed and shaken to even start that conversa. What should I do? Current comments. I've had periods for 30 years and never once put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and set up cameras. Someone else. I've thought of a million explanations that don't blame your husband, but none make sense. The idea of setting up cameras terrifies me. What if I see exactly what I'm afraid of? Fiona has been to our house many times, as we have to theirs. As far as I know, she hadn't been around last week. So if she planted that second tampon, she must have found some opportunity when I wasn't home. But whenever they visit, we all sit downstairs together. To reach our bedroom, she'd have to get past the dogs, over the child safety gate, and past other rooms. Not impossible, but not easy either. Some suggested maybe the kids did it. They're 2 and almost 4, mischievous enough. I can't rule out one of them moving something around, but I can't imagine where they would have found tampons, let alone 2 identical ones that I never bought. First update, 18 days later. The past few weeks have been hell trying to figure out where those tampons came from. I told my sister everything. The tampon in the car, the one in the drawer, my husband's confusion, Fiona's identical tampon, all of it. We compared the ones I still had. Except for the one I threw away, they matched but were different absorbencies. I definitely never left them where my husband or the kids could have found them. My daughters didn't even know what they were. My sister was sure it had to be Fiona. Either she was sleeping with my husband or she was messing with me, or both. A direct confrontation didn't seem like a good idea yet, so my sister suggested inviting Fiona and her husband to a barbecue. They already had plans. We decided it was too soon for cameras without more proof, so I just watched and waited. No changes in my husband's behavior. No new strange objects at home. Nothing from the girls. My brother-in-law insisted the kids were the key, that if something was happening at home, it would be almost impossible to hide from me and the kids. That made me feel slightly better. But things changed last week when my younger daughter, 2 years old, got sick. I wanted to stay home, but my husband insisted I go to work and he'd stay with her. My sister and her husband said that was a good sign. He was willing to take time off for her. By the third or fourth day, I was just relieved she was getting better and that my husband was helping. But one day, I came home to something very strange. That morning, I had left her in pajamas. When I got back, she was dressed in a sleeper I'd never seen before, with a little hair clip in her hair. I don't have perfect memory, but I know what my kids usually wear, and I know for sure I never bought that sleeper. It had a long, diagonal zipper, the kind I swore off before my second daughter was even born, because they're so inconvenient for diaper changes. My husband doesn't shop for kids' clothes or pick out accessories. I was horrified just to think someone else had been near my sick child without my knowledge. I immediately asked my husband if anyone had been in the house besides him. He looked as confused as before and asked why I would even think that. I pressed him again. Maybe someone had stopped by briefly? He denied everything, told me to calm down. I nearly exploded, but held back because our older daughter was there and sensed something was wrong. I asked a third time more calmly. He swore no one had been around, denied buying new clothes or doing her hair. I was overwhelmed, but dropped it for the moment. Nothing made sense then, and nothing does now. Comments at that time. My younger one is 2, barely putting 2 words together. When I ask her about time with daddy or about the clip, she just repeats what I say. Pretty clip, mommy, daddy, over and over. The older one is almost 4. That morning she was at daycare and remembered nothing unusual. No dressing up, no clip. So it must have happened earlier in the day, but I can't be sure. My commute is 45 minutes each way, so I can't just drop in unexpectedly. Luckily, my sister can sometimes drive by the house, but she hadn't seen anything strange. We have a front door camera with phone alerts. Still nothing. I started asking for hidden camera recommendations, but I'm not tech savvy and was afraid they'd be too easy to spot. Maybe the clip came from daycare. Possible. But the sleeper? No. She hadn't been at daycare for several days, and I hate that exact style of sleeper. Final update, 16 days later. After nearly losing my mind over the clip and sleeper, I realized endless accusations wouldn't help. I wasn't eating, sleeping, or caring for the kids properly, so I ordered hidden cameras, sent them to my sister's address, and her husband agreed to help install them. But before they even arrived, I finally got the proof. I got a motion alert from the front door camera while I was at work. I thought it was a delivery or the neighbor's cat. But then I saw the footage. A young woman walked into our house holding my daughter's hand, with my husband and our other daughter right behind. The girls were supposed to be in daycare, and my husband at work. And this woman, I knew she lived 2 states away and was under a court order not to leave her area. I immediately called my husband. What the hell is she doing in our house? He didn't answer. I texted him. After several ignored calls, he finally picked up. The woman in the video turned out to be his sister. As I later found out, she was the likely source of the tampons, the sleeper, the clip. She is a registered sex offender and recovering addict who had silenced another family member after abusing him. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years and never expected to again. But there she was, in my home with my children. It wasn't an affair, but somehow it was even more disgusting. She had just finished rehab and wanted to reconnect, to make amends. My husband was one of the people she sought out. He didn't want me to know, and especially didn't want me to forbid her from seeing the kids. So they met secretly at our house while I was at work. They even came in through the garage to avoid the front camera. She had slept in our bed while I was on a work trip. She babysat the kids on nights when my husband claimed they were with his parents. She bought them clothes, did their hair. My husband swore it was all in my head, every tampon, the sleeper, the clip. He calmly watched me suffer for weeks, insisting I was imagining things. He suggested I had postpartum depression, even though it had been 2 years since I gave birth. He said I wasn't sleeping, but I was too attached to the girls, that I needed to get help. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, because I couldn't imagine any other explanation. But after a month of gaslighting and lies, after watching me spiral, the truth came out. And now, instead of trust, all I have left is overwhelming rage toward him.